morning, everybody. Welcome to Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. I'm your host, Tony Fiorino, and each week here on Hey Coach Tony, we discuss the hottest topics in youth and scholastic sports. And as always, we want to hear what you've got to say, so we have already opened up the studio lines. If you need to call us here, the number is 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. Pretty busy week in youth sports. Before we get into things this morning, I want to give you two quick updates from the hometown. First and foremost, for those of you who were watching last night on MSG Varsity, the Somers Tuskers took on the Garnets of Rye and threw a little beatdown on them, 28-14. My good buddy Tony DiMatteo and his gang did a hell of a job last night. If you watched the game, the final score was 28-14. It was a great game. I want to congratulate the fine young men of Somers. And, of course, my good friend Tony DiMatteo for kicking off another terrific season. Second update, last week as I left the studio, you may remember I wished some good luck to my young daughter and a group of 10-year-old girls called the Somers Stingrays who were getting ready to embark upon a Yorktown soccer tournament. Well, those little girls did everybody incredibly proud, and they just ran the table. They came into town like a tornado and then just cleaned up. Get this, they beat FC Westchester Elite 2-1. They beat the New York Rush Patriots in a 1-0 game. They beat Brewster United 2-0. They beat LaGrange Red Stars 1-0. And in the finals, they played once again against FC Westchester Elite, where they won 2-0. Somers Stingrays, just want to congratulate you all on an amazing accomplishment. We are all very, very proud of you. Well, listen, this week on the show, I told you folks last week that we were going to have another panel here. I loved the panel show we did a couple of weeks ago where I had three very highly respected umpires, and that's a bit of an oxymoron, but we had highly respected umpires from the Connecticut area on the show. And you know what? With football season kicking off and getting into full gear here, I invited three very well-respected football coaches from both the youth and the high school levels from Connecticut. These are the three names that were kind of referred to me over and over again. And today we're going to talk about a whole bunch of things that affect us as parents and coaches and even the players in youth and high school football. So we're going to jump right into it today. Like I said, if you have any questions, by the way, that you want to ask any of the coaches, you have any pet peeves about football coaches or football in general, you want to tell us what's wrong with youth football, give us a call in the studio at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. But I'm going to kick things off today by introducing this distinguished panel of football experts. We have Coach Lou Marinelli, who is the head coach at New Canaan High School. We have Joe Bouffard, who is coach at Fairfield Ward High School, but is also the director of the Youth Football Coaches Association. It's the YFBCA, YFBCA.org is the website. Terrific website, great resource all around. And we have, last but certainly not least, Rich Albanesio, who is the head coach from Greenwich. We're not going to get a whole lot done today because these three guys are like, three toddlers in a playpen fighting over a ball. So I hopefully we'll get a lot done today. But guys, good morning. Thanks so much for being on the show. I want to start. I want to start with one thing because there's a pet. We were talking for about a half an hour before the show. There's something going on in youth sports, and it affects everybody, coaches, parents, and players alike. And it was in Sports Illustrated, the NFL preview issue. It was a September 5th issue. There was an article that was entitled, "Whatever Happened to Tackling?" And I'll tell you, after coaching 1 year of 8th grade football, that question crossed my mind more than just one time. This article basically explains how the proper form of the open field tackle is a lost art. Some go so far as to say it's a thing of the past. There were some very respected coaches like Bill Belichick that were quoted in the article. General consensus is that the players, especially at the younger ages, need more teaching. As coaches, guys, I don't know if you read the article, but what do you think about that particular statement, that sentiment? Is pure form tackling a lost art? And if it is, why did that happen and how do we fix it?
Teach the fundamentals of tackling, which you could do every day. You could teach fundamentals, and some kids just don't tackle. And I don't know if it's if it's a thing of having courage to tackle, but you drill it every day, and you hope that your kids become good tacklers. And the other point I like to make is, since they took out, head tackling, the form tackling techniques have changed, to keep the face out of tackling, which in a lot of instances, if you do keep your head up, it might be safer than not using your head. So, some people aren't knowledgeable enough in the new techniques of teaching tackling.
I concur with what Richie said. I think when youth coaches, everybody's thinking about throwing the ball and catching the ball and what kind of patterns we're going to run. And, I don't know that there's a manual, I'm sure there is someplace, of teaching tackling. And it's not as glamorous or as sexy to teach tackling to kids. Although I remember as a kid, just going back, tackling one another, you did it normally. I don't know that you get that much out in the playground anymore.
Well, you know what? The cliche, and it's not just used in football. In fact, it's never used in football anymore. When you talk about business or selling Girl Scout cookies or anything, what's the term that's always used? When you talk about doing something methodically and mechanically sound, what do they say? Blocking and tackling is the key to any game. And it may not be sexy as far as highlight films, but if you go watch any high school game and you see a team that is very sound when it comes to tackling, it makes all the difference in the world. Unfortunately, what stands out when you play against a team that tackles poorly? That's what stands out. So, it's not sexy, but that wins football games.
Well, you got to think that the average football play is going to end one of three ways. You're either going to score, run out of bounds, or there's a tackle. Mm-hmm. So tackling is one of the most important things. And at the youth level, to emphasize what Coach Al was saying is that, there is a fear of tackling, especially for a kid who's going to put on the pads for the first time. Mm-hmm. So as youth coaches, we have to address that fear, because if we don't, that fear is only going to grow in a game and jeopardize that kid's safety and the other kids around him, because he may be timid, not tackle properly, or not do anything and get run over and get injured. So I think there's a lot that youth coaches need to do, and especially if those kids are putting the pads on for the first time. And there's a lot of unique ways that they can do that, be it, back in the old days it was, let's go 5 yards apart and thud and tackle each other like two freight trains, which does absolutely no good to anybody. There's a lot of things they can do with, taking the helmets off and teaching more tackling techniques with, hands above their eyes, hands above their heads, eyes on their hands, putting the neck in the right position. There's a whole new, teaching style out there that can be used to teach tackling in a non-padded, non-contact way that really emphasizes it, while decreasing the number of hits during a practice, which brings up another whole topic of the amount of concussions and the focus on the head injuries now, especially at the youth level and high school level, that there needs to be some type of a curriculum or some type of a national standard on this is the way tackling should be taught and implemented all the way down to the youth level.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the concussions in a minute, because I don't know if there are necessarily more concussions now than there used to be, or if there's just a real concerted effort with education around these things. But you said something that sparked something in my mind. You talk about teaching them at the youth level. I don't know if you guys know, there was an article written, I know it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, about this kid out of Detroit. He went to Cass Tech. He was an all-state guy. His name is Will Campbell. He's now a junior defensive tackle at Michigan. And I'll say that part again for the story. Junior defensive tackle at Michigan. Pretty decent football school, I think we would all agree, right? Well, this kid claims that he never learned proper technique, and that's why he's on the verge of being labeled a stiff, for lack of a better term, despite this kid was a 5-star recruit out of Cass Tech. Never taught the proper technique. Still a 5-star recruit. How do you guys explain that?
Is he being taught the proper technique at Michigan?
Good for you, because this guy, guess who he blamed? His high school coach.
Of course.
He blamed his high school coach. So let me get this straight. This guy enrolled at Michigan in January of his senior year, went through 2 years of spring football, and 2 regular seasons at what is clearly a perennial NCAA powerhouse in Michigan, and now he's blaming his high school coach for not teaching him technique. I mean, what about the college coaches? I mean, listen, the reality of the situation is this. A high school coach's job is, first and foremost, to be a teacher for 8 or so hours out of the day, right? And then in your spare time, if you really think about it, you're a football coach. And we all know that you guys coach high school football for the money, right?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, granted, I know there are some states where high school football coaches are paid a lot of money, but for the most part, the stipends for coaches are sometimes $2-3 grand a year. So it's not about the money. It's about teaching kids and about loving the game. But having said that, I know for a fact that there are coaches who get their hands on these big, strong, fast kids, and it happens in every sport. So this isn't a jab at football. But you see a kid who's big and strong and fast and can just get by on his athleticism without being taught a lot of really strong mechanical technique stuff. Is that why a kid like this gets to his junior year at Michigan maybe and doesn't have technique?
Well, at Greenwich, we don't have those kids that are big, strong, fast, and don't. Everybody learns technique. Everybody goes through the same progressions, the same drills. And, we have tackling circuits for our defense and our offense every day. So whether, Michigan coaches and staff, they got fired. They haven't played much defense the last couple of years. That's probably why they got fired. And maybe they haven't been teaching tackling.
I would also like to know what his relationship with his high school coach was. Obviously, it could, even if that were true and he had a good relationship, he wouldn't say that about his high school coach. So I'd like to hear the high school coach's side.
You know what? That's a great point, and I'm going to go track this guy down because that's you hear the sense of the article. I don't think this kid realizes how stupid he sounds being a junior at Michigan and blaming his high school coach. Say whatever you want. Your high school coach did something right because you were indeed a 5-star recruit. You did indeed get some major time, big time money to go to a major league program. To cry boo-hoo, I didn't learn anything when I was a kid. When you're a junior in college, a little too little, a little too late. A great example, and we were talking before the show started. Both Lou and Rich happen to be friends with. Let's call him what he is. My buddy Tony DiMatteo is an absolute legend in high school football. He had an opportunity where he was handed this gift, and you guys can elaborate a little bit more on it, but when Jimmy Kennedy was walking the halls of Roosevelt High School, he was this intimidating, let's call it a freak of nature, great, big, strong kid. That's not enough to get you a ride to Penn State. That's not enough to get you into the NFL for what is now, his 10th season? He just signed a 1-year deal with the Giants this year. Is it incumbent upon the high school coaches to no matter, regardless of the skills that a kid has, the traits that he brings along to a football program, is it really incumbent upon a high school coach to potentially have a kid take a step back and learn technique to get him the 3 steps forward?
Well, Lou and I are very close to Tony DiMatteo, and none of his players take a step back when it comes to technique because Tony's a taskmaster. I mean, he's the Zen of football for coaches and players. And I've been in a room when Tony was with Kennedy, and Tony coaches for life changes in his student athletes. It's not just about technique and football. Tony's coaching the kid about how to succeed when football's over. Mm-hmm. So Kennedy was just a student of Tony's, on and off the field. And I've seen Tony one-on-one with the kid, and I could see how he succeeded because Tony was a great inspiration to him.
Not only that, but you hear about Kennedy because he made the pros. There's thousands of kids that in Yonkers and in Somers that he's affected. And make no mistake that he was, when I was a young coach, he was everything I wanted to and still want to be. I think he's the best coach at any level I've ever seen.
Well, I tell you what, and what was really impressive, and you guys may remember, and you can go back and look on YouTube, Tony was on my show, I guess it was just about a year ago, and he is just as proud of all his kids. And he would joke, he says, I put one kid into the NFL and I put one kid into space. Colonel Ron Garin of NASA, who was up in space just last year, he called into the show. When word got around that Tony was on my show, Jimmy Kennedy called, during football season when he was just off the rehab from his knee surgery, and Ron Guerin called from Russia while he was training for a space mission because they wanted to give their props to Tony DiMatteo. And this ain't going to be the Tony DiMatteo show, so we're going to put that on hold. We're going to go to a quick break here, folks, but you know what? Before we do...
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio each and every Saturday, 9 a.m. I am joined by three outstanding area football coaches, Lou Marinelli from New Canaan, Joe Bouffard from Fairfield Ward, and Rich Albanesio from Greenwich. And I'm having a lot of fun here, guys. I appreciate you coming on this morning. You know what? I'm going to kick it up into high gear because this is one that's always gotten to me, and you're all going to chime in on this one whether you like it or not. Why is it that football coaches, and of course it's not all, but there is an astounding majority of football coaches that are, and I'll forgive the tone of this word because I'm going to say abusive, and you're all going to start reaching across to choke me, but the yelling, the physical discipline, the off-color language, why... You're all looking up to the left, which means you're trying to think of what to say. I'm a sight guy too, but why does that happen? Lacrosse is guilty of it too. Hockey is guilty of it too. Football coaches, you have to be loud just by the nature of where you coach and your proximity to players. But I'm not saying you do it, so you three don't. But you know there are football coaches who do use the off-color language. They are, let's call it bordering on verbally abusive with players. A, do you think that stuff works? And B, how has that evolved and why does it happen?
I'd like to address that first. First of all, does anybody ever get yelled at home?
Not my kids, but most kids.
Right. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm not condoning verbal abuse, but there are different kids that, you have to get their attention one way. And obviously, to get to that point, you've tried and you've tried and you've tried. So now maybe just to get their attention, you may need to use that. But as a coach, if you scream all the time, eventually they're not going to listen to you. They're going to shut you right off. But if you go after a kid just to get his attention, to get him to focus again, I think that's a little bit different. And it happens in homes. It happens on the workplace. It happens all over. So to classify coaches, you didn't mention basketball, by the way. But I think there's a few basketball coaches around that have.
Hey, I went to St. Agnes, and Frank Morris, not during the games, but at practice, my God, at a Catholic school, he would be.
And there are some kids that need to be motivated by fear, and not fear of physical intimidation, but just fear of I can't mess up. I have to do it. There are other kids that they'll just crumble under that type of pressure. But you have to know the kid and who you're dealing with. So I'm not condoning it, but there is a time and a place when I think you need to get their attention.
And there are also coaches who cross. I mean, we were talking about the show last week when we did that video about the high school football coaches. Just like anywhere else, there are guys who are over the top, and I think coaching a year, and I'm no expert, but coaching a year of youth football, I know that I've seen guys that are using that as their outlet. Their venting process. Like they can't wait to get on the field so they can start yelling about what happened earlier in their day. Can you see how that kind of? I mean, guys like yourselves who have been around for a while and have gotten to the top of your game, you know that balance. But you watch third grade kids who are putting on the pads for the first time, and you hear an F-bomb drop, or you hear a guy verbally attack a kid who's in third grade whose helmet is flopping around his head, barely staying on. Where's that balance?
Well, football encompasses a lot of different philosophies. Some guys' philosophy is to coach with the use of fear. And other guys are what we call attaboy coaches. When a kid does something good, they say attaboy. And, it works. It's just like a religion. What works for, a Catholic might not work for a Jew, but it works for them too. So, it's just like in coaching and in your home. Some guys spank their kids. Some people don't believe in spankings. So some coaches just react. They're human beings. They react just like anybody else to a situation. And other guys are more laid back and don't react in a similar situation. So it all comes down to your personality, your philosophy. And, I think knowing Lou and Joe and myself, we're more attaboy coaches. But we do, on occasion, I know Lou and I, because we're Italian, we do lose our tempers once in a while.
Well, do you think the physicality, the physical nature of the game, do you think that brings a little bit more of that out potentially?
To get kids to be aggressive, possibly. I mean, I never really looked at it that way, but I guess some guys would think that. To me, it's more about teaching the kid fundamentals. It has nothing to do really with your opponent. It has more to do with what you're teaching your kids and getting them to execute fundamentally.
Well, Lou and Rich, you guys are coaching exclusively at the high school level. Joe, you're the director of the YFBCA. Again, YFBCA.org. It's a great website, great resource for coaches of youth players. What do you think about this? I mean, we're talking about now the younger level.
Yeah,
high school age, they're almost men, so they can take a lot more. Let's talk about
well, it's certain.
grade.
I mean, the youth level, it goes almost from third grade all the way to ninth grade or eighth grade sometimes. And the main thing for youth level is because everybody's volunteering. When I speak at clinics, I always tell coaches, hey, raise your hand if you're getting $1 million signing bonus to come back and coach youth level. Did you get that brand new car because you won the state, the city conference championship last year? At the youth level, it's all about building the kids' self-confidence and love of the game. We'll get them more focused when they get up to the high school level. But at the youth level, just build their confidence and keep them coming back and growing our great game. So with that said, it frustrates me when guys are yelling at a third or fourth grader and just belittling him down to where the point where he puts his hand in a stance and he's so scared that he's going to fail and you have the coach yell at him that he's completely forgot what the snap count is, what his assignment is on the play, and who they're playing. And that tears kids away and turns them away from this great game. Where who knows down the road that kid that the coach is barking on because he has 2 left feet and can't quite perform the technique will mature and grow into potentially the 5-star athlete that could go and play major college football. So it really frustrates the youth level to see those guys barking because they really should be there's nothing to prove. You really get you're out there because you love it. You want to spend time with your sons. You love the game, and there's really just no need for that at the youth level because there's no real. I don't say. I mean, everybody loves to win. Everybody wants to win because of the competitiveness. But there's no real bragging rights. There's no, state dinners if you get, the conference championships. It's all about getting these kids to teach them proper techniques, teamwork, character development at the youth level. And it really frustrates me when I go on a practice field and see guys just screaming from across the field, the top of their lungs. And I believe it's just doing no good to the players they're working with.
I also think that it's the high school coach's job to teach the youth coaches in your town.
Excellent.
I really,
Agreed.
Lou,
I want to stop you on that because I want to do a whole point on that because I've got firsthand experience where I've seen how amazingly well that works. And if you're a youth football coach or a high school coach, the next segment we're actually going to drill right in on that. The reason I asked about the verbal abuse and the physicality of it is because you know what? I'm not perfect. I got swept up in it. When I coached this group of 8th grade boys last year, I found myself much more vocal, much more animated, much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not abusive, but boy, it's almost like I wish I could have...
Excited.
I almost wished I could have put the pads on myself, and I couldn't help but live a bit through those kids. As proud as I was when they did something great, I was angry when they made mistakes. So, hey, Coach Tony, guess what? You're just as guilty as anybody else, but that's clearly something that does happen. And I didn't ask it to pick on football coaches. I asked because I want to know if somebody can figure this one out because I think it needs to change.
Let me just say this. First of all, we're hitting on all the negatives of football. There are so many high school football, youth football should be a growing experience, and I think from what it teaches, the discipline, the teamwork, the sacrifice, the sportsmanship, and everything else. It's the greatest experience that you can give your son. And I can't tell you, I've gone through the halls of the high school, and so many youth coaches have turned off these athletes that could be so good, because they said something, and all of a sudden the kid took it either the wrong way or maybe the right way, and just said, I don't like this game, I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah, the kid who quits when he's 12 years
right.
old. Yep. Well, we're going to start turning the tables here, and we're going to go into some of the positive aspects, because I believe it's the best game in the world, and I'm a baseball guy, just so you know. But we are going to have to go to a quick break here, and before we...
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio this fine Saturday morning, and I am just having an absolute ball with these three coaches. I got Rich Albanesio from Greenwich, I got Lou Marinelli from New Canaan, and I got John Bouffard from Fairfield Ward and also from the Youth Football Coaches Association. We're having a blast. I think we're having more fun during the breaks than we are during the show. But I'm going to stop hogging these guys because I know I want to get to some of your calls. So let's get right to them. I think we're going to go to John, who's on line 2, who's calling in. Hey, John, you're on Hey Coach Tony. How are we doing this morning?
Good morning, Coach Tony. How are you?
I'm great. What's on your mind?
I'm just curious. Good show. Talking to the three coaches, I'm wondering, over the years they've coached, what kind of player do they enjoy coaching the most? I'm not talking about it's easily the best player on the team, but like what kind of type of player do they look forward to coaching? Is it an offensive player or a defensive player? And what kind of skills they bring to the table? And also, did they ever have a kid that they just couldn't reach, that they just couldn't get through to, that just frustrated them, that made them question, am I doing something right in coaching football?
Why do I coach at all? That's a great question, John. I'll let you listen to the response here. Guys, I want to start with the second part. Did you ever have a kid that you just sit there and you have some regret, like, man, I just could not get through to that kid and I wish I did?
Yeah, I think we all do. I'll speak for all of us. I think we all have, and it is extremely frustrating because you tend to dwell on your failures more than your successes. And as far as enjoying who you coach, I enjoy coaching all of them. I like practice probably as much as I like the games. I might even like practice more because, we're around all our kids. It's just it's a fun time to be alive when you're practicing with your kids.
Yeah, it's such a great opportunity. It's your favorite time of the day when after school you have those kids and you have your practice planned out and everything, and you see those kids. And I can't say everybody's different. Just like when you go to work, there's certain guys you like, certain people you don't like. But to be with a young group of guys that that are listening to you and are looking to you for guidance. That there's a lot of power there. So and the kids you don't reach, the kids, and you can see it at our levels right now for Richie and I. You can almost see what's going to happen. You see that ninth grader that says, I had a bad coach when I was in 8th grade, so I'm not going to play football anymore or something like that. And you can see what happens after school when they don't go to practice. Mm-hmm. And you see where they're heading, and you see they're hanging out with a group of friends that are going to get them in trouble. And you can almost predict what's going to happen to them, and that's frustrating. And for that, Matt, that's when you want to take a kid and maybe raise your voice a little bit and say, hey, come on, let's go. Mm-hmm. We can help you here.
Yeah, that's especially when it tends to be when you say I can't reach that kid. It just goes to show that you care as a coach and you see the potential and you want something good for that kid. What about at the youth levels, Joe?
Well, it goes the same thing. I look at coaching the kids. It's like my two kids, my own personal two kids. Some days you love them, some days they frustrate the heck out of you, and but you still love them and you still want to push them and see them succeed. And I think that transcends right over to the field too. There's some times where you get some great kids, and sometimes it's just your natural instinct to gravitate to some of those great kids, and it may not be just a great player, it may be just a great kid that works hard, that you want. I got to get this kid in the game. He's busted his tail all week long in practice. I got to get him a couple reps, and he may not be the best player on the team, but he's been there, hasn't missed an off-season workout, or been really hustling during all the drills, and you want to reward that kid, even though he may not be a key player, but hey, listen, I'm going to get him get a handoff. I'm going to get him in a rep on special teams, things like that.
What causes a kid to fall into that category? Because all sports, all genders, all levels, there are kids like that, and I think that's what John was alluding to with the first part of his question is, what do you look for? How would you, for the parents that are on the edge of their seat trying to figure out how to get their kids that extra handoff, that extra rep, whatever it is, what goes into that kid that makes a coach feel compelled that say that's one of my guys, for lack of a better term?
I think it's just the kid's personality. If the kid is willing to be open-minded and going to learn, be a good listener, have a solid work ethic. Doesn't have to be the great guy first there on the practice field, last one to leave. Just a great all-around kid that's going to be there. It's going to put the time and effort into listening to what you're saying, developing themselves, asking a question or two throughout. How do I make myself better? How can I work with this technique better? And just being there consistently on a day-to-day basis. I think those are the types of kids that we're really looking for and we really want to coach.
That's great.
Anybody can coach the great athlete that has a great attitude. Mm-hmm. But the most inspiring thing for us as coaches is that little guy who's got the heart of a lion. The Rudies, but there's smaller guys at our place who are always there. Yeah, they're always there at practice. They do whatever you tell them to do. And I think that's the guy that we enjoy coaching the most. Anybody could coach that blue chip football player who's in the weight room all the time, but these little guys who just keep coming and doing whatever you ask them to do, those are the guys that inspire us.
And on the flip side, sometimes it's those blue chip guys that are the pains to coach because they think they've already been told they're so great that you can't motivate them. Sometimes their athletic ability is at a higher level than everybody else around them, so they're really not pushed. And I say that even at, there's some talented youth kids out there that really dominate their league and they think they're all world and deserve all this stuff, but when they really get to the next level when everybody else is at the same, the freshman level, everyone's same size now, same speed, things like that, and they get put back on that little, kick down a notch on that plateau, on that platform there. But sometimes it's those really talented kids. They don't want to take the coaching because I'm so good. I don't need to be, and I've seen that both at the high school level where, we had an exceptional receiver when I was coaching New Canaan a couple years ago that, I said, listen, you're not playing. Your goal is to play at the college level. Well, I'm going to treat you like a college level a player. This is not how they would play in the Ivy. This is not how they would play in the Division I ranks. And that really kind of motivated him because his ability was a little bit higher than anybody else on the field. That was some of those buttons, and we as a coaches had to find out to really motivate that kid and get him to perform.
What are the qualities that a boss looks for? When a boss says, boy, he's a good employee, what does he look for? What does a customer say, boy, that's a great company? What qualities? Those are the kind of qualities that coaches like players to have. That's what we're trying to instill so that when they leave this experience, they'll go on and be successful. All we're trying to do is to teach them how to be successful and to figure out the landscape and what to do to be a little bit better for themselves.
Have you ever, maybe not you guys, but do you know of any football coaches who begrudgingly give time to the kids who are obviously the stars? In other words, I found myself really wishing I could give the ball a lot more to the kids who were the yes coach, no coach. Generally try to apply the things that you teach them. I found myself really trying to go out of my way to give the ball to those kids and almost not need the superstar running back. And by the way, the kids who are listening from my last year's team, it has nothing to do with the running backs. But the point is, the kids who you would think just physically should be there, I found myself looking for excuses to put the other kids in the games if it would not hurt the team. Did you guys ever go through that?
Well, there's kids that some coaches sell their souls to the devil for. And, it's a catch-22. They have to win because if they don't win, they're going to lose their job. And then you're not going to be able to use your philosophy of life to teach the kids. So, I think Lou and I are at the point now where we've coached for so long that we're so comfortable in our philosophy that we're not worried about somebody telling us we're going to lose our job. So we're going to coach with the principles that we believe in, and we always have. And I think that's why we've been here for so long, because we haven't compromised our principles. But there's other guys that are so afraid. They let the kids dictate, and those are the guys that don't last in this business.
And to tell you how close Richie and I's philosophy are, my wife once said if she had any other coach in our league to coach our son, it would be Richie. So I mean, we were very similar that way. I don't know. I know over the years, the great ones, you really don't have to. I mean, you have to coach them, but you don't have to coach them as much. If you're going to be successful, it's not necessarily the great ones, but it's those kids that are in that gray area.
Sure, the mediocre kids. You get them to step up.
You have to bring them up, and that makes you a better team, I think. And you really have to work hard at those kids and the lesser kids to bring everybody up to par. And that's how that's how I think you become successful.
That's why I think football truly is the ultimate team sport. You know, you can actually show kids film where you can, and there are plays, and you hope it happens in a way where you say, guess what? 10 guys did their job on this play. One guy didn't, and look what happened.
Right.
You know, that's what I loved about it. That's why I think, like I said, I'm a baseball guy. Did I play football in high school? Yeah. But I was a baseball guy. But football is my favorite game. I love it. And having two daughters, I really wish I could draw a similar parallel in a girls' sport that was as obvious as football when it comes to, you know, it's as important for me to rely on you to do your job as it is for you to rely on me to do mine. And if either of us screws it up, everybody fails. I mean, what a great life lesson for these kids. And I think that's why, part of the reason I think why there are guys like yourselves, Tony DiMatteo, Joe Paterno, and all these guys who really do. You talk to their former players. Paterno always says, I got more lawyers and doctors out there than I have NFL players. You know, it's because they instill life lessons, and I think, you know, that's why my hat is always off to the football coaches who do it the right way. You know what?
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. Joined today in studio by Lou Marinelli, Rich Albanesio, and Joe Bouffard, three of just the best guys you want to meet, and terrific football coaches both at the youth and high school level. I do not want to get through the show today, guys, because this hour is burning right through. I do not want to get through the show today without addressing something that I think is an absolute detriment to kids everywhere who play football. People hear two terms in football over and over and over again, and I don't think a lot of people know the difference. The two terms are hurt and injured. Now, you guys know what I'm talking about, because the football mentality is you play hurt. What people don't tend to follow up on is you don't play injured. So can somebody, besides me, please illustrate for our listeners the difference between hurt and injured so that parents, kids, and coaches alike understand the difference? Who wants to tackle that one for me?
Well, again, that's an individual thing too. You know, some kids have a higher threshold for pain than other kids, and you know, we're lucky that we have a fantastic trainer and doctors, you know, within our community that service our team. So as soon as, you know, we get a kid that's has any type of nick or whatever, we send him right to the trainer, and you know, we abide by what he tells us. And you know, nowadays it's a thin line between being injured and being hurt. But, you know, some guys, they just have a bigger threshold for pain.
I'm in a similar situation to Richie. I'm very fortunate to have a trainer. Matter of fact, the trainer and I have been together almost as long as I've been together with my wife. She's there for 30 years. I'm there for 31. But and we kind of know now when somebody goes there, and she'll tell me, he's a big baby. I don't understand why he's not playing. He should be playing. Mm-hmm. And, you know, those are the kinds of kids. But I always get the okay. I don't make that determination myself. In the day of so many lawsuits and, you know, people with the liability, I don't think you can take a chance. But you have to try to encourage those kids to move on, and you can do this no matter what. I mean, didn't Terrell Owens play in the Super Bowl with a broken leg?
Yeah,
I mean,
you know,
practice. And it's that kind of toughness that I think that you want to not ridiculous. Obviously, if a kid's hurt, you don't want him to play. I couldn't live with myself if a kid were to injure himself even more. But you want to encourage him to push on, and you'll be surprised at what you can do. I don't want to get into this, but I just read, you know, I read the book about the Unbroken this summer. That was and you look at what those guys went through. And as a matter of fact, I read part of it to my team about some of the experiences they had. And I mean, what that generation went through, and you know, I think we have to teach some kind of toughness to our kids.
Well, there is, and there's that fine line. I look at it as hurt is something that isn't going to get worse if you play on it. Injured is something where a doctor's going to say there's a name for what you have. So I actually encourage kids. This is going to sound wrong, so if you want to call me, I don't care. I encourage kids to play hurt. I would never allow a kid to play injured. In other words, you bang your knee and it hurts a lot. It's not going to get worse. If you bang it to the point where you've damaged your ACL or your MCL or your XYZL or whatever it is, you're done, and I don't care. Don't be the tough guy. But I think the problem has been, and concussions is a big problem with this, and I was guilty of it. My little girl, everyone thinks football concussions. My little girl, my baby, she was playing basketball, and it was on one of those days where there was snow outside, so people brought water into the gym. She went tearing after a ball, hit a patch of water, literally backflip, landed on her head. Everybody in the gym was like, oh no, like something really is bad. She got up, went to the sideline, then she goes, hey Dad, I'm okay. I let her play. That afternoon, she's at a birthday party, starts throwing up all over the place. I told my wife, get her to the hospital. She has a concussion. Mm-hmm. And listen, I'm the ultimate grand poobah of kid sports. I'm Hey Coach Tony. I screwed up. I let my kid play injured. And the good news is now there's more and more research, evidence, materials, information that you have about how to diagnose a concussion and how it is a brain injury. It's not getting your bell rung anymore. That term's got to go out the window. That is a brain injury. And in order to heal that injury, a kid has to basically sit in a dark room without any significant stimulation for like a day. And until that happens, you're risking further injury. Look at all. I mean, there are laws being pursued and lawsuits being pursued with the NFL Players Union to the NFL about all the after effects of these guys who are walking around like Mongos because they would be playing with concussions. There are guys who step outside their house, and if it's a bright sunny day, they got to go back inside for 10 minutes to adjust to the light. So I guess the message is, play hurt if it's the kid's decision. Never play injured. Never play injured. All right, we got a little more time, and there's one more thing I wanted to really get into with you guys. And this is sport agnostic, so it happens in every sport. I'm sure each of you has been involved in a blowout game, both at the youth level and at the high school level, and there are differences. Question for you: how do you handle a blowout, both as on the positive end of that blowout and the negative end of that blowout? How do you handle blowouts? We'll start with the youth level. So, Joe, why don't you hit that?
Sure, I'll jump in at the youth level here. Let's say we are winning and my team's blowing out an opposing team. Well, first of all, there's a lot of plays you can do with clock management. There's time management you can do, plays you can run. Obviously I would make sure that all my kids get in, give the kids that, may not get a ton of reps or a ton of plays in a tight game. I'm going to get them in and give them all the reps they want. There's the ways you can communicate with the officials to, hey, let's, be a little more aware of the penalties going on, so we can throw an extra flag to slow to hold them back a little bit, or you give us some penalties without being detrimental to the kids and what they're trying to do and be successful there. But there are things as a coach that we can do, again, clock management wise, the specific play calling that can manage on that score and keep it from getting any worse. On the flip side is you just got to be positive with your kids. Mm-hmm. Find a way that maybe a one play that they are doing. Maybe it's something minute, but it's positive, and reinforce that to build their self-confidence. And then find out ways that we can do it. Now, the more important thing is at the youth level, if there is a loss, we as adult coaches, we take the fault for the loss. Never blame the kids. These kids are fourth graders, sixth graders. They don't know, what a win and a loss or, we take the fault. So if it's a blowout, I'll say, listen, guys, we didn't do a good job as coaches. We didn't practice against that certain defense. We didn't do our proper tackling drills. We didn't really go over the fundamentals that well. We take the blame for the loss, and not put it on the players.
What about the high school level? There's a lot more. There are higher expectations at varsity, right? So
well, that's true. But Connecticut is the only state in the union. Guys abused that. Abused it so bad they were beating people by 80, 90, 100 points in some cases, and it got ridiculous. So Connecticut passed a law, a 50-point rule, where if you beat a team by more than 50 points, you have to go before the board and explain why. As a coach, I've always felt that I coach some of the best kids in our community. And no matter who you play, that guy, that coach, the opposing coach, is coaching some of the best kids in his community. And, there for the grace of God, go I,
And it's going to happen.
And it's going to turn around. Hey, it's happened to me many times, but and you have to take something out of it, something positive. And I think you have to accentuate the positive that you did do. But you also have to be aware when you're on the other side that it's going to come back around to you someday. And, you got to make sure that you don't want to embarrass those kids because they're the best kids in their community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to chime in a little bit, Lou and I, we're blessed where we coach. We have great parental support. We have great community support. We have tremendous kids. And we've fortunately been on the side of more victories than losses on that side. But who do you respect more? That kid from another school who goes to practice every single day and they get blown out week in and week out. And that's what we try to explain to our kids. I respect that kid as much as I respect you, if not more, because he's going to practice every day without the support that you're getting. And he's got to pick himself up by the bootstraps every single day, knowing that they might get blown out again this week. And there are schools that happens to, and the coaches that coach those programs, I have nothing but respect for, and their kids.
At the youth level, there tends to be a little bit more that, boo-hoo, you're beating up on us, why don't you guys slow down a little bit. What do you think about that mentality at the youth level where it's like, hey, give us a chance to come back? Because I got my own opinions on that one.
Well, I think it looks at this as, if I'm coaching a team and we've got, we're well coached, we're well organized, we're proficient in what we're doing in our scheme, opposed to a volunteer coach that may not have a strong coaching experience, maybe a first-year coach. Maybe kids have been playing the first year where, my kids have gone up the ranks, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, now we're at the seventh grade, and, they've been playing together for 3-4 years, so they've got that cohesiveness together. It's tough for me to say, hey, kids, we can't stop being perfect, stop being, doing what we're challenging you to do or coaching you to do.
And if you put your second string in, can you tell them, hey, you finally got your chance, don't do well?
Exactly.
Well, what do you guys think of this? Because I came up with this for a different sport, and I think the idea was, as let's say you and I are coaching and you're blowing my team out, I would say, hey, Coach Joe, tell you what, you guys are clearly beating us up pretty good. Why don't we agree without the kids knowing, the game is over, you got your win, but now you can let up? Because a lot of coaches would say, and I've heard coaches tell me, you know what, we did let up, and we did what was supposed to be the right thing, and then we lost the game. So in other words, as the losing coach, is it fair for me to say, hey, let up so we have a chance to win? No, it's really not. I mean, it's kids' sports, but let's not be, let's not all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. I mean, there are guys who have their jobs coaching, even the volunteers, they have their jobs because they win, and if they lose, they don't get to coach anymore. So I think there's a way to do it where you say, let's agree, game's over, but you know what, we, now give us a chance, and even if we come back, the game is yours. Well, guess what, guys? I told you it was going to be a quick hour. The hour's over. I want to thank you all for listening, and I really want to say thank you to Rich Albanesio, Lou Marinelli, and Joe Bouffard, 3 outstanding coaches. And if your kid's lucky enough to play for them, you've got something special. Hey, folks, please be sure to tune in every Saturday at 9 a.m. on 940 and 1510 ESPN Radio. This is Hey Coach Tony. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, guys.